All right, there we go. Good morning, everybody. We will start promptly at 11:15. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You can remain in this room. You still get credit. Doesn't matter which room you attend. I was answering, I believe, Nada. I was answering her question. Good morning. Wow, look at these good mornings. I love it on this fantastic Friday.
Fantastic Friday.
Juneteenth Eve.
That's what I was about to say.
Yes,
isn't that beautiful?
Yes. As you know, Dr. Bromley, I attend University of Oklahoma for my master's program. And so in Oklahoma, we were celebrating Juneteenth just the same as they were saying that African Americans always celebrated. And so we called it the Oklahoma Picnic is what they would call it.
The Oklahoma Picnic?
That's what it was titled, Oklahoma Picnic. And I'm telling you, and we would have our, I know this sounds a little dated to all of you, but we will have parades and we will have on different shows, stages and everything. And people will wear their overalls and women would dress up in their long dresses. And it was like a costume thing to wear. And we would drink our sugar iced tea, or they would call it sun tea. That's tea that's made from the sun.
I remember sun tea.
We would drink
I remember making
tea,
sun tea.
Yep, in our mason jars. But it was just to celebrate in the remembrance of Juneteenth. Because after, and this is just a little history, when Juneteenth occurred in 1865, when a lot of the slaves became as freed people, they migrated up into Oklahoma to purchase land so that they too could be a part of that Homestead Act. And so a lot of them went into the land in Oklahoma, and that's why they call it a picnic, Oklahoma's Picnic. Yep. So that's just a little Oklahoma fun fact. Good morning, everyone. I see. So it's 11:08. So I guess.
Welcome. It's 11:08. What a great time. All right.
Yes. You want to wait to give people more chance to get into the room, Dr. Bromley?
Yes. I'm going to start this session at 11:15.
Oh, I see someone says in Pompano it's called Blues and Sweet Potato Pie Celebration. All right.
Oh.
Ooh, goodness, I would love some sweet potato pie now.
I would too. I just learned something new, and I teach in Pompano, so that's great.
That is news. That's news.
Did you say blues and sweet potato pie?
Yes. That's what someone had just put in the chat. I think that was Lakana just put in the chat. Blues and sweet potato
great.
Pie.
All right, beautiful.
Okay, Priscilla, to get credit from Broward County Public Schools, you have to attend all of the entire event. Yes, LaKay say that the Blues and Sweet Potato Pie event is at Apollo Park tomorrow. Thank you for letting us know about that. Yes, Priscilla, you can choose any breakout room that you choose to attend. If you go into the website, it has the schedule there on the website, on the Equity and Diversity's website. No problem. And I was speaking to Miss Coronel, Priscilla Coronel.
All right, so we are 5 minutes out from the beginning of our session, Why Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And so I will be back on camera at 11:15. We'll start the session promptly. Thank you.
Are you guys good? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we are good
Are you
to
guys
go.
good?
Yes.
Okay, I thought, all right. I didn't know if it was, I just didn't hear anything.
No worries.
Sorry.
We're starting at 11:15.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, welcome everyone. It's 11:15. We want to honor everyone's time. Welcome to Why Historically Black Colleges and Universities, or why HBCUs. My name is Elizabeth Watts Bromery. I teach at Pompano Beach High School. I am a native of Fort Lauderdale and a graduate of the NOVA Research and Development schools. I am joined by Mrs. Thawanda Houston, my former colleague from West Broward High School. And we teach a course called The Legacy and Impact of HBCUs. We developed that course along with Marion M. Williams from Equity and Diversity. And today you will see some highlights from that course, but it's a really informative course. It's highly interactive. And so when it is offered again, I encourage you to take that. So welcome. So our agenda today in this brief session is to understand Florida Statute 1003.42, required instruction for African and African American history. We want to explore the legacy and history of HBCUs, including the Divine Nine, African American fraternities and sororities. And we also want to develop an awareness of resources to study the legacy, the history, and the impact of historically Black colleges and universities. So Florida Statute 1003.42 is required instruction. And these are some of the areas that are related to diversity education. So we have the Holocaust, African and African American history that we'll focus on today, Hispanic contributions to the United States, and women's contributions to the United States. So just taking a look at the mandate related to African and African American history. So the mandate reads, the history of African Americans, including the history of African peoples before the political conflicts that led to the development of slavery, the passage to America, the enslavement experience, abolition, and the contributions of African Americans to society. And our keynote speaker, Mayor Paget, gave a powerful presentation today relating to the content of this mandate on African and African American history. So this is required instruction, grades K through 12. And the law provides, quote, members of the instructional staff of the public schools shall teach efficiently and faithfully, using books and materials required, following prescribed course of study, and employing approved methods of instruction. So the state statute 1003.42 provides that African and African American history is required instruction. All right, there we go. So why teach African and African American history? Well, it is the law, but we also need to look at moral and ethical reasons to do so. So this research is from Dr. Patrick Coggins out of Stetson University. And research shows that teaching African American history, which is American history, raises the self-esteem of all children, including students of African descent. It increases student academic performance by providing rigor and relevance. And it increases the positive perception of African peoples and people of African descent overall. So now we get to what is an HBCU, Mrs. Houston?
I am so glad you said that. An HBCU stands for Historically Black College and Universities. Okay, so we've all known that their existence. But what we did not know was in 1965 is when they finally put a title to say that these colleges do exist. And the principality of them is to make sure all students receive a very informative and enraged education. So that HBCU, I tell you, we're here today to change the narrative about HBCUs, okay? So if we can go ahead and go to how this was a need for HBCUs. While I had the opportunity to attend Miami Northwestern High School here in Florida, I was taught from our teachers, from many teachers, they would tell us, get your education is the one thing they can't take away from you, because what's in here, that's yours. Get your education. And when I tell you that is such a true statement, because once I continued on with my education, what I have here, no one can take it away. And it is interesting because Mr. Hubert, a slave, then a sharecropper, purchased his land as a sharecropper. And you know, we don't hear about that often, that many sharecroppers did have the opportunity to purchase their land. But Mr. Hubert purchased his land. He built a school on his property for all 12 of his kids to attend. He told all 12 of his kids to get your education is the one thing they can't take away from you. And they did. All 12 of them were allowed to graduate college. Now that is an accomplishment. The history of HBCUs stems back really from 1865. So if you remember, in 1865, like what we're talking about now, Juneteenth, 1865, okay? The abolishment of slavery, the 13th Amendment, 1865. But we also had something that was called the Memorial Land Grant Act. The Memorial Land Grant Act started in 1865. And that act was really started by a congressman who was a farmer from Vermont. This farmer, he was not considered an astute type of gentleman because he didn't have that formal education, you know, what was expected in Bostonian and Philadelphia and that type of environment. But he felt that every farmer, anyone who wants to be a farmer, should be able to learn how to farm. So when that first Land Grant Act was established in Congress, each state was to take that money and use it to build a school, a state university. Now, this in the South, 1860s, we're talking about still going on with the Civil War. Then we get to after the Civil War, we have Reconstruction. And during Reconstruction, the government looked at the South and said, hey, wait a minute, you did not establish any schools for those newly freed slaves. So another amendment or another Land Grant Act had to be initiated, which is the 1890 Land Grant Act for African Americans. And the government told those states, those southern states, you need to establish these schools. And in those schools, you must make sure that those newly freed slaves are taught how to farm. And that's when we got the initials of agricultural and mechanical. So anytime you hear agricultural and mechanical behind it, like we have with FAMU today, FAMU, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, they were established from the Land Grant Act. There's some powerful information. And that's probably why we have some top engineers. And that's what the mechanical stands for, those engineers. Even the North Carolina A&T, agricultural, and technical, those HBCU, okay? So therefore, again, established by the Land Grant Act. So the Black history in 2 minutes, I want us to take a few minutes, these 2 minutes, to listen to Black history. This is a powerful, by him, a powerful clip by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. Go ahead, Dr. Bromry, and start for us.
Before the Civil War, educational opportunities for free Black children, particularly in higher education, were quite limited, even in the North. Some students, however, managed to leap over the hurdles standing in their way. John Chavis, a free Black man from North Carolina, was the first African-American college student. Chavis studied as a private student under the president of the College of New Jersey, now known as Princeton University, and continued his studies at Liberty Hall Academy in Virginia. In 1862, Mary Jane Patterson became the first African-American woman to receive a bachelor's degree when she graduated from Oberlin College. Patterson became a teacher and then the first Black principal at the Preparatory School for Negroes, now known as Paul Laurence Dunbar High School. Before the Civil War, discrimination against Black students led to the founding of the first Black colleges in the North, including Wilberforce in Ohio and Lincoln and Cheney universities in Pennsylvania.
Cheney University in Philadelphia is the first historically Black college or university. It was founded in 1837 as the Institute of Colored Youth. The founding of that institution transforms educational possibility for African American people.
The era saw huge growth in the number of Black colleges and universities, from Howard and Fisk to Hampton and Tuskegee.
Historically Black colleges and universities take African Americans who struggle in our failing public schools and turn them into a rigorous scholar with access to a future who has earned the credentials for a college degree.
HBCUs arose as a direct response to racial discrimination, providing opportunities for Black students to gain a higher education and enter the middle class. According to the New York Times, HBCUs make up only 3% of the colleges across the country, and yet at least 50% of Black doctors and 80% of Black judges have graduated from their classes. There remains a significant racial gap in degree attainment, but this gap is shrinking thanks to these Black institutions and to increased Black enrollment in historically white colleges and universities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bromry. Yes, Dr. Gates has very great information on his clips. He's also a part of the pbs.org. If any of you want to use any of his clips within your classroom or just even within your own kids at home, I use it within my classroom. I get a chance and I have the opportunity, and I am so glad and honored to be able to teach African American history to our high school students, okay? And so I do use a lot of his clips as my background information. Now let's take a moment, let's take a break. Let's take 2 minutes and type in the chat a shout out to your favorite HBCU, to your favorite historically Black college or university, or a historically Black college or university that you may have heard of from your other friends. Go ahead. I see FAMU in there. Howard, yes. Yes. Morehouse, great. Bethune-Cookman, yes. Florida has 4 HBCUs in the state of Florida. So, hey, we are magnificent.
We are magnificent.
Magnificent. And okay, very good. Alabama State. Can someone tell me the name of the largest HBCU? I haven't seen it yet. The largest HBCU.
That would be North Carolina A&T.
North Carolina A&T, very good. Yes, it is. Good job, North Carolina. Yes, North Carolina A&T is one of the largest, okay? Now I want to show you all, very good, Alabama State. Now I want to show you all this clip that we have. Go ahead, Miss Baker, and if you can mute yourself. And I want to show you all this clip. It says, tell them we are rising.
I just wanted to follow up with number 2 being Florida A&M University.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it is. Now, can we go ahead and I want to share with you all about this clip. This clip that tells us, says, we are rising. This clip was made by Stanley Nelson Jr. Some of you may have seen some of his work before. If you watched Freedom Riders, okay, that's where Stanley Nelson Jr., he was the writer and the author and the producer of that film, okay? And in this film, it talks about the importance of HBCU to African-American students, to all students. One student that I grasped and that really touched me was, she was from another area, northern school, that she was mainly the only African-American in her classroom, okay? And so she felt that when she arrived at this HBCU, she said, they see me. That's important to children, okay? They see me. That's very important to children. Because as we stand in front of the classroom as teachers or as professors, sometimes we have that child that sits in the back and is real quiet, okay? And a lot of times as we're walking around the classroom, we try to bring that child into the class, right? Into the room, but sometimes they're just a little shy. And especially if that child is uncomfortable in their space. But when she arrived, not only did she excel at the HBCU, because I'm telling you, we have some miracle growers that have done a lot here from being graduates of HBCU. In this film, you're also going to hear how the newly freed slave says, we want to learn how to talk to books. That's important. So as the Freedom Bureau is going around the country trying to find out what is it that these newly freed slaves needed, that was one thing that they wanted, an education. Very important. So I'm asking you, you're gonna see the clip now, but I'm asking you to please take a moment to watch. It's like an hour long on your own time to watch this clip. Go ahead, Dr. Bromry.
Colleges are spaces where Black people are affirmed.
You could be yourself and develop yourself in this rich soil.
It's a space that is an unapologetic Black space.
These are places where there's incredible freedom to explore.
We wanted to better ourselves. We wanted to have an institution where people like us all wanted to be more than the status quo.
The question for African Americans has always been, what is education's purpose? Who controls it? And what is the relationship of education to the broader aspirations of our people?
Powerful. Powerful. Okay.
Very powerful. You're welcome. Very powerful. I did not say at the beginning of the presentation that my parents graduated from Florida A&M University, and going to an HBCU really changed their lives. My father was recruited FAMU by Coach Jake Gaither. My father was an All-American basketball player in high school in Kentucky. And he said that was his way out of the situation that he was in. He was one of 10 children, the only one to graduate from high school. And he was recruited to FAMU on a scholarship for football because they did not have basketball scholarships at that time. And that had a great impact on his life and the person he became. My mother as well was the first Black itinerant speech therapist here in Broward County Public Schools, and she became a principal. But my mom's entire family basically her entire family went to FAMU. My sister went to Hampton University, and they talk about the impact of attending an HBCU and how it was integral in their development. So if you take our legacy and impact of HBCU's course, you will receive additional content and resources, and also engage in some small group activities to explore the history, legacy, and impact of HBCUs. But looking at this graphic, you see 4 people who have made impactful contributions to our society. We have activist Stacey Abrams, who is a graduate of Spelman College. Our Vice President, Kamala Harris, a graduate of Howard University. Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia, a graduate of Morehouse College. And Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, a graduate of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical. So now we're going to move into linking, for the sake of time, linking the impact of HBCUs with the Divine Nine, African American fraternities and sororities. There's a short video we have to show you, and then we'll move towards our closing of the session and questions.
Month long, we are celebrating Black History at WCNC Charlotte. This week, we continue our discussion on education. We've been highlighting historically Black colleges and universities. Greek organizations are a big part of the culture at HBCUs. WCNC Charlotte's Aisha Scott has the story from Johnson C. Smith University.
The history of Black Greek letter organizations like the one I'm a part of, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, dates back to the early 1900s when African American students were excluded from Greek organizations on predominantly white campuses.
Black sororities and fraternities were created on the basis of exclusion, right? At some point, there were a group of Black men who were trying to be part of an organization, and they needed votes. One white vote meant they couldn't be a part of the organization, so they decided to start their own.
Leland Howard is the president of the National Pan-Hellenic Council of Charlotte, an organization that brings all 9 Black Greek letter organizations together for one common cause.
We are able to work together to ensure that there's change in the community. We work together to ensure that policies and social policies are being pushed.
Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is the first Black Greek letter fraternity founded in 1906 at Cornell University. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is the first Black Greek letter sorority founded on the campus of Howard University in 1908. Also called the Divine Nine, these sororities and fraternities were founded on the principle of service, and it's a value that is still upheld to this day.
We're out in the community, we're helping with voter education, we're helping with healthcare education, homelessness, we're feeding the homeless, we're out collecting supplies.
Over the years, African Americans have joined Black Greek letter organizations for a variety of reasons. I turned to a few of my colleagues to find out their why.
My mother and my aunts are all members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and my uncle is a member of Omega Psi Phi. So growing up, I saw the service. I saw them being dedicated to giving back to their community.
My stepdad's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, so that's all I ever knew. That's all he ever told me about.
The Sigmas, like, they helped me move in. They kind of like sheltered me. They guided me. So it just in my head, I was like, well, if I was to ever, play, it would be probably that, because I mean, that's what stood out to me the most.
They kind of adopted me as a little brother as I came in as a freshman. And I just admired the respect that they demanded from the team and the respect that they got on campus. And it was something that I wanted to be a part of.
A part of organizations that often felt underestimated.
We enjoy being underestimated, because when we walk into spaces and people have doubted us, we're showing beyond compare that we're ready, we're excited, and that we have been leading for a long time. It's just a matter of other people recognizing how great we are.
Reporting in Charlotte, I'm Aisha Scott for WCNC Charlotte.
Thank you, Dr. Bromry. Yes, the National Pan-Hellenic Council governs the body of the Black fraternity and sororities, and we say the Divine Nine, okay, because there are 9 Black fraternities and sororities. And that National Pan-Hellenic Council, I always picture it as this: the United Nations. If you ever saw the leaf or the organization of the National Pan-Hellenic Council, and how everyone who's a part of the Divine Nine sits at the table and they have discussion on what is it that these communities need. Okay, and you heard the gentleman inside of the video, and he says that we stress on voters registration. We feed the hungry. It's whatever that particular community or those particular communities need. And what the National Pan-Hellenic Council is, they would select like 5 needs of the community, and we all come together and make sure that those needs are met. Here in the state of Florida, about 10 years ago, I remember when I moved here to Florida, we were reading to tape decks, okay, to the cassette tapes. And those cassette tapes would go into the library or the media centers of elementary schools here in the state of Florida. And those schools would attach it to the books that we read to. So the children were able to listen and follow in print of what the National Pan-Hellenic Council, the Divine Nine, had read to them. So it's very important. Now, I know you're trying to say, like, well, what does the Divine Nine have to do with the HBCU? Because we're changing the narrative. And the Divine Nine is connected to the HBCU because of the space that they represent. The Divine Nine, these sororities and fraternities, remember, they weren't, the African Americans weren't allowed to join these sororities and fraternities on white campus. So the very first Greek organization, Black Greek organization, was established at Cornell University. And then, of course, for the Alpha Kappa Alpha women, it was established at Howard University. So they came together to say, hey, what is it that our community needs? The Delta Sigma Thetas was also established at Howard University. They were the stand-up women who stood up for women's rights. They made sure that although Elizabeth Staton and Susie B. Anthony, that we all know, that we teach to our children every year when we talk about the women's suffrage, but they made sure that the African-American women were able to vote as well and to be recognized that we are leaders. As the parade went on, I mean, I love to picture, I love history, because I love to picture the story of these brave women marching in the parade, standing up for women's rights. And when they called the state name, Ida B. Wells, as we know of her, we talk about her all the time in American history, but we don't share what part did she do when it comes down to the women's suffrage movement. Ida B. Wells grabbed her sign, and when they called her state name, she ran to the front to represent African-American women also want to vote. Okay, so yes, Divine Nine, HBCU, I hope we've changed the narrative for you to show you how important that HBCUs are today. Think about it. We had Mayor Pigott on this morning. He gave us a great timeline. Where did he finish school from? Morehouse in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. Dr. Jeffries is a professor I like to follow from Ohio. Where did he finish school? Morehouse. Okay. So we have to remember that when we talk about HBCUs, introduce them to all students, because on the campuses of these HBCU are all students, all cultures, all backgrounds, all religions are on this campus. It's no longer just called an African-American school. It is a historically Black college, but it's open to everyone. And so please change the narrative, introduce these Black HBCUs to all students. Thank you, Dr. Bromry.
You're welcome. So I want to highlight a lesson plan. Last summer, Mrs. Houston and I were served as the Broward team to write lessons for grades 6 through 12 for the African American History Task Force, the Florida Commissioner of Education's Task Force on African American History. And so Mrs. Houston and I are both members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And based upon our working with the sorority and my parents were members of Divine Nine organizations, I decided to write this lesson. And this is available on the African American History Task Force website. So this is for grades 9 through 12. It can be adapted to middle school. So in this lesson, students work in groups. Each group is assigned one of the Divine Nine organizations, the sororities and fraternities. And then they create a display, an exhibit. It can be online. It could be, a hard copy one, since we're going back face to face. The culmination is a Divine Nine museum based upon the students' research. So I just wanted to highlight that lesson. So we'll move on. These are some additional resources. Again, the documentary Mrs. Houston mentioned, Tell Them We Are Rising, the story of Black colleges and universities. It's a documentary on PBS. This is a TED Talk, The History and Importance of the HBCU Experience by the Chancellor of Winston-Salem State University. There is an HBCU College Fair, Experience the Legacy. And I know the Equity and Diversity Department has been involved with bringing that to our school district in Broward County. The Common Black College application, there is actually a breakout session with the founder of the Common Black College application today. With this, you can apply to at least 30 historically Black colleges and universities. We have 2 organizations that provide support, financial and moral support to students, programming support. The Thurgood Marshall College Fund for students who attend HBCUs, and the United Negro College Fund. This year, as I was doing research for the course that we teach on HBCUs, I found this resource where US News ranks 2021's best historically Black colleges and universities. Mrs. Houston, do you have anything to add before we go to questions?